Taylor Swift's global tour is approaching $2.2 billion in North American ticket sales alone. Meanwhile, women are flocking to the movie theater to see Barbie, which has passed $1 billion at the box office. Some are saying that Taylor Swift's tour may be the highest grossing, most lucrative tour of all time. I think there's a deep hunger for the representation of the feminine, the color pink, the feminine experience, the love songs that Taylor sings about her ex or her dream man. All of this is part of the feminine experience. Could it be that in a world that is pushing women to be more like men, while at the same time often denigrating men, there exists a deep hunger for the feminine? But is femininity the color pink? Or what is true femininity? Of course, I would argue femininity can include the color pink, but it is so much more. In this episode of the Lila Rose podcast, we're going to talk about true femininity and representations of it in media versus toxic femininity and representations of that in media. Our first sponsor is Every Life. Every Life is America's first pro-life diaper company. These diapers are as good as any other brand. They're made with top-notch materials. They are great. They're leak-proof. They're cute. They're great. You're going to love this diaper brand. Check out everylife.com. Order your first batch of diapers. You can use the code LILA10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Everylife.com, America's pro-life diaper company. Our next sponsor is 7 Weeks Coffee. 7weekscoffee.com. You can order delicious gourmet coffee. It's what I drink every morning. And by doing so, you're fueling the pro-life movement. 10% of all proceeds go to pro-life pregnancy resource centers. Over $150,000 have already been given to the pro-life cause. Ditch Pete's, ditch Starbucks. Check out 7 Weeks Coffee. 7weekscoffee.com. Use the code LILA10 at checkout for 10% off your order. The big question that hit the world last year with Matt Walsh's film from the Daily Wire was, what is a woman? I think that question can be answered very simply by saying it's a biological adult female, but there's so much more to being a woman than simply being and existing as a biological adult female. The way to live out one's femininity involves so much. And so what does that look like? What does true femininity look like? And then what are all the sort of false models that are out there today in femininity? Recently, as an example, Lizzo, the pop singer, has been accused of the sexual harassment of her staff. She's somebody who is very much on the pro-body positivity train. She is someone who's very publicly very overweight. She's a very talented artist, but part of her persona is to celebrate being very overweight, and many people criticize both the sexual harassment and her celebration of obesity as a problem. Meanwhile, we have a lot of women in media, in culture today, who are really selling their bodies. I mean, OnlyFans is a mushrooming business with millions of people on it, many of them women who are selling their bodies. You know, the Kardashian empire, in no small part, is built on selling a very hypersexual version of femininity, sexuality, and basically selling, you could argue, immodesty. Okay, are there positive representations of media, of women in media today? What are they? How do we wade through the bad and celebrate the good? So what I'm going to do is break down how I see true femininity versus toxic femininity. This also matters a lot right now because there's so much conversation about toxic masculinity. You've probably heard this. I just did a podcast episode with Nancy Pearcey, the author and professor who talked about her book, The Toxic War on Masculinity. And that's really a common phrase in culture today, toxic masculinity. And it is usually referencing that man who's that uber alpha male who's all about himself, all about his power, who really doesn't care about other people. It's this machismo attitude, and people denigrate that. And it's understandable why, because you ask your average man, and Nancy mentioned this in the last podcast, you know, what is that funeral? If you're at a funeral as a man and you're celebrating a great man, what is he celebrated for? Well, typically he's celebrated for his honor, for his integrity, for his service of his family, for his hard work to provide and protect. That's how we understand across cultures a really great and noble man. So the toxic man, as our culture calls him, or the toxic masculinity, as our culture calls it, is actually not a real masculinity. It's a false version of it. And true masculinity is about providing and protecting and caring for being strong for one's loved ones. Okay, so what does that have to do then with femininity? Is there a toxic femininity that is the kind of partner or the enemy, you would even say, of the toxic masculine? We don't talk about that much in today's culture because I think women in some ways are infantilized today. Women are seen as the kind of perpetual victim. It's hard to see the woman as in any time the villain. There's a lot of, I think, passes that women get for behavior in our culture, and men maybe are held to a higher standard. Some people blame feminism for this, to say that we overcorrected the inequalities between men and women to now make it more unequal for men. Other people say, well, it's because we pushed women into men's places, saying that that's where they belong. They need to work like a man, act like a man. And they weren't actually working or acting like men. They were acting and working like the worst men, meaning the promiscuous man. Well, I'm going to be promiscuous like a dude. Well, that's not even being like a true man, because true men are faithful and loyal. You're just being like an extra bad man and a bad woman. So all of these conversations are happening, which I think is good. But I wanted to break down what I see as the toxic feminine, because I do think it exists today. And the toxic feminine today, the first reality of the toxic feminine today, in my opinion, has to do with, people call it narcissism, and that could be kind of a clinical personality disorder name you could give it, but the attitude that it's all about me. It's all about me. So the toxic feminine is obsessed with oneself, to the point of not acknowledging, valuing, or caring for other people. So the toxic feminine is, it's always not my fault. It's always other people's fault. I'm always the victim. I'm not going to take responsibility. It's a hyper obsession with one's own physicality, one's own beauty, or one's own career, or one's own anything. And it is so self-focused and self-absorbed that it doesn't make space for love, ultimately. Because love is about willing the good for other people and ultimately receiving good from God and other people. You can't do that if you're totally obsessed with yourself. Unfortunately, a lot in our society is encouraging women to be obsessed with themselves, all about self-actualization. I mean, the entire pro-abortion movement today, as they call it, the women's rights movement, which is such a crazy misnomer to say that women's rights are to kill a baby, which include a lot of mini females in the womb, tiny females. But the whole idea of women's rights is your power to kill a person, a human life in you, your own child, son or daughter. Think about how crazy that is and how much that is toxic femininity, to say that my power as a woman is to kill another woman or man, a boy or a girl in my womb. Michelle Williams received the Golden Globe. She's a very famous actor, and this was a couple years ago, and she went to the award ceremony clutching this golden idol, basically this golden trophy, thanking her right to choose the abortion that she had had years earlier in her career, thanking the death of her child for the success of her career.
When you put this in someone's hands, you're acknowledging the choices that they make as an actor, moment by moment, scene by scene, day by day, but you're also acknowledging the choices they make as a person. I'm grateful for the acknowledgement of the choices I've made, and I'm also grateful to have lived at a moment in our society where choice exists, because as women and as girls, things can happen to our bodies that are not our choice. I've tried my very best to live a life of my own making, and not just a series of events that happened to me, but one that I could stand back and look at and recognize my handwriting all over, sometimes messy and scrawling, sometimes careful and precise, but one that I had carved with my own hand. And I wouldn't have been able to do this without employing a woman's right to choose.
So sad. They're all cheering. They're cheering for an abortion, the death of a baby that she's celebrating and crediting with her holding this award.
When to have my children and with whom. When I felt supported and able to balance our lives, knowing, as all mothers know, that the scales must and will tip towards our children. Now, I know my choices might look different than yours, but thank God, or whomever you pray to, that we live in a country founded on the principle that I am free to.
I mean, it's completely picturesque, clutching that literally a golden trophy that's going to turn into dust in the future at some point, like that does not have an eternal soul, that has no, human value, as the reason she was glad that she killed her baby, that she exercised the right to choose, as she said it. So that is, I think, a almost perfect to a T depiction, a living story, a living parable of toxic femininity that I prize so much: my career, my physical beauty, my success, that I would literally kill a child and thank the death of my child for some sort of worldly accolade, like this golden calf, basically. So, it's very dark stuff, right? And that is the excess of our culture today, that dark view of womanhood, that womanhood is about me, and it's at the cost of you, even if you are a small, vulnerable, dependent child. Okay, another bit of toxic femininity to put in there. People heavily criticized Amber Heard last year in the Amber Heard v. Johnny Depp trial, when she and he went to court to debate whether or not, and to determine before a jury of their peers, whether or not Amber Heard had unfairly slandered Johnny Depp and ruined his career. And ultimately, she was found guilty for misleading the public about their relationship, because she claimed that she was completely the victim and he was this aggressor, but the facts were much more complex than that. It looked like they were both aggressors and maybe they were both victims at different points in the relationship. I found the whole trial very sad, quite frankly, and heartbreaking, that the whole world was just glued to the screen watching this really train wreck of a relationship playing out. There have been broken parts of everyone's life, and this time in their lives was put on full display for the whole world to see. It was completely tragic, but there were news articles afterwards talking about Amber Heard's behavior, saying, "Is this the toxic feminine?" So that kind of title started being used in media as something to apply to Amber's behavior, because she ultimately, people said, manipulated Johnny Depp and was deceitful in how she behaved to try to paint him as the villain and her as the victim. Now, you could probably argue the same things about Johnny Depp. So this isn't to say he's coming out smelling like roses. I think he was actually abusive too. But the reality here is she was living out very publicly, tragically, we all got to see it, in the history of her behavior with Johnny, a very toxic femininity. So that femininity in that case was in many ways using her beauty and her personality, her charisma and charm to manipulate other people. And that's another trait of toxic femininity, where femininity, which can be so beautiful and so inviting and can inspire people to greatness, instead, the beauty of the feminine is used to manipulate, to inspire lust, or to otherwise deceive, or to control other people, using one's sex appeal to control other people. Unfortunately, we see some very popular public figures, women, doing this, and they're doing it very overtly. An example, of course, would be the Kardashian empire. And again, I'm not judging anyone's hearts here because I do not know their hearts, but I can say that the representation of womanhood is often very crass. And by crass, I mean, obviously the female body is beautiful and it's something that should be celebrated and cherished. But when you're overtly using your sexuality to sell things, your body parts to sell things, to inspire lust or greed or envy, that's where it crosses the line. And that's what pornography ultimately is. Pornography is not about respecting one's body and respecting other people's bodies. It's about hyper-objectifying yourself to inspire lust in other people. And unfortunately, a lot of the Kardashian empire has used actual lust and scandal around sex in order to build their monetary empire. Kim Kardashian's career was launched with a sex tape, and so much of her persona online is hypersexual. There's these very infamous images of her hypersexualized in order to attract attention. That's not, I would say, true femininity. I think that's a toxic version of femininity, and it's not a good role model for future generations. Now, again, I'm not trying to attack Kim Kardashian or any Kardashian personally here. I think that I'm sure they have good intentions, and I think that they can be really good role models, but I think it's important to call out that part of toxic femininity today, just like a man's toxic masculinity, can be using one's power. Men at large are more physically powerful than women. Men's toxic masculinity can be, rape and assault and attacking women and attacking those that are vulnerable, using your physicality to harm other people. A form of toxic femininity can also take its place in physical abuse. It's not like women can ever be physically abusive, but another form of toxic femininity can be using one's body to deceive, to manipulate, to seduce, to inspire lust. Now, I'll say one last thing as an important nuance here. It is very possible for a woman who is very modestly clothed to inspire lust if the man's a lustful man. So I'm not saying that women are responsible in that sense for a man's lust. I think this is a very important point. But I do think women are responsible for respecting their bodies and modesty to the point where they're not using their bodies to sexually exploit or sexually seduce other people. So that's just an important distinction I want to add there. Okay, a few other qualities of toxic femininity. This stuff is kind of rough, so I'm looking forward to getting to what I see as true femininity and some positive role models. But I guess we started with the toxic because I was talking about toxic masculinity, so now we're talking toxic femininity. But a couple other things. So I just talked about toxic femininity using beauty or sex to manipulate or control or inspire lust, right? Another toxic version would be rejecting feminine beauty altogether. I think that's also a toxic femininity. So if you reject your femininity, you hate your body, if you are at war with your body, you're not going to be able to live your feminine beauty and genius. Obviously, there's extreme cases of this with gender dysphoria where women actually or girls actually hate their bodies or are trained to hate their bodies. We had a great interview with Chloe Cole about this. We talked to Dr. Marion Grossman about this plague, the social contagion of hitting young girls today who just hate their body going through puberty. And so they just want to destroy their female body and be boys. They don't want their breasts. They don't want to go become curvier. They hate that about themselves. This is tragic. And I would say in this case, it's kind of a toxic femininity that is imposed on them by a emotional disorder or a mental health disorder that they're struggling with, and they need love, care, and support. But what happens in a society that weaponizes toxic femininity and tells girls, oh, you should be this way. You should hate your body. Or if you believe you're born in the wrong body, then you must be. And we will literally help you go to war with your body by having a double mastectomy, like in the case of Chloe Cole, the young girl who had a double mastectomy at just age 16, or in the case of countless other girls going through this. So toxic femininity also isn't just about exploiting one's feminine sexuality to control and to inspire lust, but toxic femininity can also be about a rejection of one's feminine and a coldness towards one's own femininity. All right, a couple other things that I think are important. I think toxic femininity also sees men as conquests and as enemies. So it's two things, one or the other. Conquest, I'm going to conquer this man and I'm going to control him and seduce him and manipulate him. Or toxic femininity could be, I want to compete with this man. I'm at war with this man. He's my enemy. He's against me. And I do see this in certain strands of feminism today where sometimes men are just seen as all bad and all the enemy. Basically, we take the worst men and we say that's all men, and that's wrong. I think the Me Too movement had a lot of good aspects to it to call out sexual behavior or assault and bad behavior in the workplace and to condemn it. But when you do that, take it to the point of believe all women and that any woman accusing any man is always right and that a man has no defense for themselves if they're accused of anything, I think that's where it becomes toxic to say that women are always the victim, men are always the villain, and that men can always be the enemy. I don't think that that's true. Okay, a couple other things. Toxic femininity, I mentioned this earlier with Michelle Williams, hates fertility, hates children, hates our ability, our unique superpower as women to be mothers. Look, your ability to bring life into the world as a woman is what makes you uniquely a woman. Now, that doesn't mean every woman's going to be a biological mother. Maybe there is a problem and they're not able to be, or maybe they're not called to be that because they will never marry, they're not called to marriage. That can be the case for many women, and that still means they can live out their femininity in other ways. But your ability to bring life into the world is a deeply and uniquely feminine trait. It is, I would argue, the most unique of all feminine traits. It is what your body makes your body different than a man's body, your ability to bring life into the world. So what happens when women at large are told that their empowerment or their success is to be powerful and successful and not a mother, and that they should actually kill their babies if they become mothers. I mean, it's the most anti-feminine thing you can imagine, and yet that's what's being sold to us in the name of women's rights. So, toxic femininity absolutely includes a rejection of children and a rejection of our fertility. Think about birth control today. Birth control at large are pills that we take to effectively temporarily sterilize us and shut down our natural, beautiful hormonal systems so that we can be constantly fake pregnant. Our body actually with hormonal birth control thinks we're constantly fake pregnant so that we are not able to get pregnant. It is the most anti-woman healthcare practice, I mean, besides abortion, that is out there. It's basically attacking our beautiful biology and our fertility and treating it like a sickness or a disease. Your fertility is not a disease. Your fertility is a sign of health. It's your womanhood. It's beautiful. If you have issues with your fertility, like heavy periods or cystic acne, then instead of taking this pill, a birth control pill like a panacea, discover and go to a healthcare practitioner who will really go under the root cause of that. Why are you facing this struggle with your cycle or, with your skin or whatever it is, with your hormones? How can we balance your hormones and get you healthier instead of shutting down and suppressing your hormones? So, your femininity is a beautiful gift. Toxic femininity rejects your body and the physical systems, your reproductive system as a woman, and treats it like an enemy or a threat. The last thing I want to mention about toxic femininity is I believe that toxic femininity also weaponizes emotions. So emotions are a part of life. I'm going to do an episode in the future on emotions, actually. Everyone experiences emotions. We all have them, some more than others, and they can be very intense and powerful. And emotions can be very, very powerful mechanisms to be used for good. They can teach us things. They can give us insights about ourselves and experiences in other people. So emotions aren't good and they're not bad. They just are, and they can teach us things. But emotions shouldn't rule us. And I do think there's a tendency in our society to be ruled by our emotions. I feel this way, and therefore I think that this is true, right? So my subjective experience of my emotions means that X, Y, or Z is true or not true, or I get to decide my truth based on how I feel. And yes, your feelings are real, and they should be acknowledged, and they should be dealt with, but your feelings do not need to direct your reality. We have free will to make our decisions and our choices. So I do think there's sort of this, there can be a hyper emphasis on feelings to the point that feelings are ruling the roost, as opposed to feelings are important input, but they should not rule the roost. And again, maybe we'll address this in a future episode. Let me know if you'd like to see that. All right, so that's toxic femininity. Roundup. All about me, uses beauty and sex appeal to control and manipulate, rejects feminine beauty entirely, sees men as the enemy or as conquests, sees children as enemy or as burdens, doesn't honor commitments, weaponizes or is ruled by emotion. Oh yeah, I forgot one more thing. I think toxic femininity also puts other women down and is always competitive with other women and sees other women as threats as opposed to collaborators. I don't really want to use a pop culture example here. I'm sure there are. I'm sure you guys have one, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Cattiness, pettiness, attacking other women, jealousy, like all that stuff is not true femininity. It is toxic femininity. All right. That was a long list. Let's go positive now. Positive femininity. What are the things? What are the things that if a great woman, let's say like your grandmother passes away and people are talking about her life, what are the things that people remember as the beautiful things about her? I recently attended the funeral of my grandmother, and what she was remembered for included these attributes: her love of her family, her love of her kids, her love of her husband, her beauty, her charm, not in a way to harm other people or manipulate, but to bring joy and to bring the family together and to celebrate beauty and to celebrate the beautiful aspects of life, fashion and food and the things that can just make life so lovely. Also, her kindness, her generosity, how she would go out of her way to welcome people to the home, and her hospitality, that she was always inviting people and making friends wherever she went. She would often say to anyone that she just like met on the street, she'd say, "You and I are related." And she'd like joke around about how basically everyone was related to her. People loved it. I mean, people thought it was so charming. But people remember like her vivaciousness and her kindness and her family orientedness. And I'm going to guarantee you that if you think right now of a woman in your life that you admire, or a great woman in the past that you look up to, maybe you don't even know them personally, what is it about this woman that you truly admire? Yeah, it might include her physical beauty or her fashion sense. Yeah, of course, those things are wonderful. But I'm going to guess that it includes her goodness. It includes her virtue. It includes whether or not she loved her family and whether or not she was like family focused. She cared about her kids. She cared about her marriage. She cared about the community. I'm going to guess that she cared about the nation. I'm going to guess that those things made her femininity so beautiful. And here's a little secret. Some of the things that are most beautiful about the most feminine female are virtues that when a man lives out the same virtues makes them beautifully masculine. Isn't that a cool thought? Like, let's take courage for an example. A courageous woman, a woman who is fearless and speaks her mind and her convictions of her heart, not to harm other people, but to help them. And she does it in a way that's feminine, that's loving and good. That's a beautiful feminine role model. Similarly, a man who's espousing that same virtue of courage and he's fearless and standing up for what's right and defending the vulnerable looks just beautifully masculine. So that's the secret to a lot of this, is that virtues are what underpin the most beautiful feminine and masculine. They're just lived out in that more feminine way versus masculine way, which is just unique to each person, each man or woman. And by the way, share in the comments a story of that maybe grandmother or mother or aunt or just someone that you admire and you believe left a truly beautiful legacy as a woman. All right, so what are the qualities of a truly feminine woman? And in many ways, they're the reverse of the toxic woman. So first of all, there's someone who works in harmony with other people in their community. You know, they're focused on interdependence and love, not radical, I'm all about myself, but they're focused on, I love other people and I love my family. And if I have children, I love my children. And I am focused on, honoring my parents. And if I'm married, honoring my husband. And they're focused on love. Love is about wanting the good for other people, as well as you want the good for yourself, to be loved. And that feminine woman has that in spades. She just exudes love, and she's about, I use that word, interdependence. She recognizes that, yeah, she's responsible for her actions, but she needs other people, and other people need her. And that's a beautiful thing. Another thing about true femininity is it celebrates true beauty and our femininity. I mean, that's why I think Barbie is so popular right now, is it sort of taps into this desire to celebrate the feminine. And yeah, I'll have some criticisms of sort of the ideology of the film too, but the thing that's clearly attractive about it is that it's celebrating this very feminine presentation. And I think people are hungry for that. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, you look at past female role models or women in history, especially like recent history that people admire, and you think about like Grace Kelley of Monaco, the Princess Grace. She was so exquisitely classy. Like, her wedding dress with the lace sleeves and the way she carried herself, it exuded a confident, gentle femininity. Or people admire Princess Diana. What are some of the qualities we admire in Princess Diana? Her fashion, her vivaciousness. Also, she seemed very intentional about caring for the vulnerable and the poor. She seemed very much caring for her family. Now, you could also have criticisms of Diana and her behavior, of course, but generally speaking, she's beloved for this presentation of the feminine and for this winsomeness that she had. Another example of a universal role model for many people is Mother Theresa. Now, Mother Theresa isn't known as like the fashion icon. She wore one dress her whole life. She wore the blue and white sari. But Mother Theresa, not being a cover model for a fashion magazine, was more influential than arguably any model in human history. because of her acts of love. And she lived out her femininity in service of the poorest of the poor in Calcutta, India. And she was just lovely and beautiful in being a mother. Even though she wasn't a biological mother, she was effectively an adoptive or a spiritual mother of so many souls. So she lived femininity in a clearly beautiful way, even though it wasn't that overtly overt representation of beautiful femininity in one's appearance. As a girl, I actually put a picture on my wall of Mother Teresa's feet. So her feet were just very sort of tangled and weathered by walking basically barefoot on the streets of Calcutta. Her toes were bent in and she had calluses. And, this was not like the feet of a woman who gets pedicures. I'll be honest, I get pedicures. Mother Teresa did not get pedicures. But I put that on my wall as an example of true beauty. I mean, she had the feet of a servant of others, of a loving mother who sacrificed her entire life out of love for others. Now, she didn't sacrifice to the point of self-harm. I think that's an important note. Mother Teresa was actually really intentional about getting her sleep. She was super intentional about prayer. She required all of her sisters to actually, and the missionaries of charity, to actually take tea time every day and take time to have tea together and like commune together. So part of her femininity wasn't just like work and toil and, having damaged feet, but it was about caring for her body and caring for the other women entrusted to her leadership. All right, a few other things about true femininity. What is it that we so admire? Let's say Jackie Kennedy. She's another icon for many women today. She was very classy. She was very feminine. Well, I think it was that Jackie Kennedy was you could argue, long-suffering wife of her husband, a president. And she was always by his side. And upon his death, she fought for his legacy. And there were many accusations about his infidelity and all of these things, but her representation was of that faithful, loyal wife who was classy, who was kind, who stood by his side even at his death. And I think she's remembered in part as an icon because of her loyalty and her beautiful loyalty. Again, I'm not making a judgment here about like, you should be loyal to a cheating man or anything like that. I'm just saying what we admire about her largely is that commitment that she had, her classiness, but also what was an apparent commitment. People saw it as a commitment to her marriage and to her nation, quite frankly, to her nation and to her marriage. So I know this is controversial, but recently Michelle Obama, former First Lady of the United States of America, made some really beautiful comments about marriage. Now, I do not support Michelle Obama's politics. She is very pro-abortion, although she's not particularly vocal about it. She has been in the past. She's not now, which is good. I hope she softens and becomes pro-life. But she did say some very beautiful and true things about marriage, and I do want to listen to that.
We've been married for 30 years.
I know.
If I fell out with him for 10 and we had great 20 years, I'd take those odds anytime. But we glamorize marriage. And in this day and age, marriage is more about the dress and the dresses and the proposal and the honeymoon and all the stuff around it. And young people aren't ready for the real of marriage.
I mean, I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. And she's talking about the importance of marriage as a partnership and commitment, fidelity to your spouse. So kudos to Michelle Obama for making that distinction. And I think more of that is good. That is a representation of true femininity in that, yes, it's about fidelity. It's about commitment. It's not just about what is typically seen as the feminine aspects of a marriage, getting married and the ring and the dress and the proposal and the honeymoon and the Instagram pictures, but it's about lifelong commitment and raising children. So I'm not saying she went all the way to say all the good things it was about, but she definitely had a good point that we get it wrong if marriage becomes about what is ultimately superficial, which again can be the tendency, I think, of some women today. It's all about the Instagram shot, right? As opposed to marriage is about love and commitment and sacrifice. All right, a few other things. I think a beautiful woman and true femininity is about celebrating other women. We don't need to be competitive with each other as women. Every single woman is made uniquely herself. There is only one of you. And to compare yourself to another woman physically or your skill set or your experiences or your relationships, there is only one of you. And part of, I think, our beauty as the feminine, as women, is to discover our self-worth and our value as we are. Now, it can be hard to do this if we didn't have unconditional love growing up, especially from a male figure like our fathers. I mean, there can be wounds with this. but it's in discovering and healing our sense of feminine identity and valuing just the way you look with every bit of your facial features, every bit of your personality. Love the way that you are. And yes, you want to be better. You want to be healthier, stronger, wiser, of course, but accepting yourself and valuing the gifts and the attributes that you have been given helps you not compete with other women, helps you not be jealous or envious or have there to be strife or disharmony. And I think a true femininity has a confidence and a prizing of one's own beauty, however that is. Each person's different. And that doesn't put them in competition with other women. So celebrate your femininity. Celebrate the unique woman that you are and that nobody else is. Couple more things. The feminine woman and the true feminine woman is really a celebration of the ability to be a mother. Our femininity is very much tied to our ability to mother and children. I do think if we are not excited about children, not that we would have them ourselves because we're not all called to that, but if we don't understand how beautiful a child is, I think that has to do with something at war with ourselves, actually, that we need to tap into. Part of the feminine is celebrating the child and the beauty of that little child and the dependence of that child on us and the need for feminine nurture and love, as well as masculine nurture and love. So if you as a woman are living out your true femininity, you'll be celebrating your fertility. You'll be celebrating the ability of a woman to be a mother and prizing children. I think the fiercest defender of a child should be his or her mother and father, but the mother should be fiercely protective of her baby, of any baby that she comes across. And that's what the pro-life movement is built on, is a fierce protectiveness. That's why I'm pro-life, because I've been able to tap into that femininity inside me of fierce protectiveness for the child, and I'll do anything to fight for the child. And that's why the pro-life movement is populated with so many women. I mean, men should be protective too, but you're a woman, you can bring life into the world. You want to nourish and protect that life. And so true femininity is about celebrating our superpower as women, which is to bring life into the world. One last thing is that women and true femininity is about honor and character. It is about keeping commitments. It is about, rising above maybe even our own emotions to choose what is right, even when it's hard. And I think that when we look at like St. Frances Cabrini, there's a movie being made about her that's fantastic right now. And she is this woman who courageously left everything she knew in Italy to come with no money to the United States. She was rejected because she was an Italian immigrant and she was seen as less than. And she came to serve the poorest of the poor in New York City. And she gave it all to protect the vulnerable and to care for them. And she overcame some of the toughest circumstances to do that. And so her honor, her integrity, her character, her service, her virtues are what are so admirable and will be remembered for centuries to come. So to wrap up here, Taylor Swift's concerts are sold out. Barbie is being sold out. Femininity is more than the color pink. What is a woman? Yes, it's adult biological female, but it's so much more than that. A woman is someone who fully embraces virtue and love and service of others. I hope this episode encouraged you to live out your unique femininity, or if you're a man listening, encourage you to celebrate femininity. I think it's one of the most beautiful forces in the world, the power of a woman to be who she's called to be and to love. It's what I aspire to. Let me know in the comments what you think of this episode, your take on femininity, female role models that you might have, why they are role models to you. Don't forget to like this page and subscribe to our YouTube channel and to give us 5 stars on whatever podcast app you use. Leave a comment, a review. This will help the podcast reach more people. Also, we have launched our Patreon. We have a small but growing community there. Be one of the first to join at any amount each month as a patron of the Patreon, and I will be doing a special live just for our patrons to answer questions and to share some thoughts. So go check out our Patreon. Link is in the bio. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you next week.